It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
Associated Press are reporting that China has surrounded Taiwan with warships and warplanes. Donald Trump's visit to Beijing, to which he was looking forward so much, is now in the balance. And for the 11th time, Donald Trump has announced that America has won the war against Iran. Although American bases are still going up in smoke on a daily basis, and on an hourly basis, 24 hours a day, the Israeli people who thought they were invulnerable and could laugh at the misfortune of others are skulking in air raid shelters that are increasingly being bombed themselves. And is Netanyahu alive or dead? Well, if you believe that AI you saw with the full coffee cup that never goes down, I've got a bridge in London I could sell you going cheap. And Tucker Carlson may very well be about to be arrested. I'm not joking. It's all coming up on the mother of all talk shows. You better not miss it. We don't know if it's true, but Associated Press are reporting that China has surrounded Taiwan. And in a way, it's hardly surprising news. Whilst South Korea is left without any anti-missile ammunition or indeed the machinery to fire it, laying it open to any North Korean move, the Chinese have perhaps decided that the time has come for the reunification of their country, long prevented by the war games and the economic sabotage of the United States of America. Well, the United States is very heavily occupied elsewhere. So it might be that Trump's big state visit to China, that Nostradamus Professor Jiang just the other day was saying was going to surprise us with the scale of the bargain that was going to be reached, might well not happen at all. definitely if Taiwan is now subject to economic blockade, there's no way that Donald Trump can go to China, which is a great pity. So sad, too bad. Never mind, as we say in Glasgow. Now, for the umpteenth time, Donald Trump has repeated the obvious falsehood to the extent that he is now beginning to look like a man for whom the flap of white coats is imminent. The flap of white coats, the straitjacket, the padded cell, has said that they've destroyed 109% of all of Iran's missiles, all of Iran's launchers, but the American base in Bahrain was literally leveled to the ground just this day and every day. American targets, Citibank in Dubai, for example, have been heavily shelled and damaged and put out of action. And the Iranians are saying they're now actively looking for a Trump Tower to fire a missile at. I don't know if there are any Trump Towers, but I know there are very many economic and financial assets of the Trump family in the Arabian Gulf. And if so, well, I would sell my shares in those if shares exist. Maybe Donald owns it all, how would I know? But if there are shareholders out there, they should know that Iran is on the hunt for Trump property in the Gulf. More importantly, Israel is being remorselessly bombarded 24/7 for 2 whole weeks. And high-value casualties on the Israeli side are either confirmed or are speculated about. The head of the Air Force, the head of Mossad, the Mossad headquarters, the Tel Aviv police headquarters were all bombed and destroyed just this very day. Where is Ben Gvir? You know, the man who goes around with a badge, with a noose badge on the end of it, because he is intent on hanging Palestinian prisoners, just like the British hanged the Zionist terrorists when they were blowing up our buildings and murdering our soldiers in 1947 and 48, although to a remarkable extent that has now been entirely forgotten in the British public mind. Ben Gvir, the man who taunts prisoners, the man who assaults prisoners, the man who proselytizes for the right of Israeli soldiers to rape Palestinian inmates, in one case literally raped to death, in another case sodomized by a knife on camera with all the charges now dropped. Yes, that Ben Gvir. Where is he? Well, according to the BBC, he was involved in a car accident. And again, if you believe that, I've got a bridge in London I could sell you going cheap. Ben Gvir may be dead. Smotrich, the other fascist member of Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet, may also be dead. His son may also be dead. But the big enchilada is Benjamin Netanyahu himself. He hasn't appeared in public for 5 days. He didn't appear at the Israeli Security Council meeting, and I must say his colleagues looked distinctly discomfited by his and the absence of others. His brother, for example, Ido Netanyahu, who, for reasons that I can't quite fathom, is a member of Israel's War Council. The absence of Netanyahu immediately led to speculation that he had been struck by an Iranian missile and killed, which would, of course, be one of the greatest ironies in history. My religion doesn't permit me to say all I would like to say about the possible demise of Netanyahu, a man who's been in power for 25 years and responsible for more misery on this earth over that 25 years than almost any human being alive. Is he alive or is he dead? Well, they did try just about the worst AI image in the world, showing the difference between AI you download for free and AI that you pay for. He literally sprouted a sixth finger in the middle of his peroration. 6 fingers, and Benjamin Netanyahu, well, there's much I could say about that, but the best and kindest thing I could say is that that was obviously a fake. So they tried again today. They released images and audio of Benjamin Netanyahu buying a cup of coffee in a Jerusalem cafe, although that cafe is in fact closed as a result of Iranian strikes. So it would have had to have been specially opened just for him. More importantly, he bought a frothy latte. It was pure frothy. According to Grok, it was 95% likely a fake, an AI or other fake image. According to other experts in the field, it's 97% fake. You could tell by one or two of the characteristics of the fake that it was just that. First of all, it was a distinctly thinner Benjamin Netanyahu than the last time he was pictured in public just 5 days ago. Now, he might be on the Ozempic, but it's working fast if he is. Secondly, he picked up the frothy latte, and it was frothing to the brim, and not a single drop of it spilled. Not a single drop of it appeared on his upper lip. He took a very big drink of it, and then the camera shot the cup again, and if he did take a drink of it, he didn't swallow because the cup was still filled to the brim. And then we learned that he did exactly the same trick in exactly the same cafe in 2024. And there are some images, whether correct or not, I can't vouch. There are some images that seem to show on the receipt, on the till, that this actually was in 2024. He showed his fingers, and there were only 5 of them, but we could tell he was lying because his lips were moving. But his lips and his ears didn't look like Benjamin Netanyahu's lips and ears. It's really all very perplexing. In a way, it doesn't matter all that much, but there's a lot of speculation that his death and the death of his wife and the death of Ben-Gvir and perhaps the death of Smotrich are all going to be announced tomorrow. You could tell why Israel would want to suppress this news when they're taking the biggest pounding they have ever taken in the entire history of the state. They gambled. They misunderestimated Iran, as George W. Bush would put it. They egged on Donald Trump, the only president in the United States history to be stupid enough to launch an attack on Iran with all of Iran's strategic advantages, to which I shall turn in a minute. But they also misunderestimated Iran's ability to hit them back. The Israelis, you see, are not used to that. They're used to slaughtering Palestinian refugees in camps. They're used to dropping 2,000-pound bombs on canvas, on tents. They're used to setting fire to families shivering in the sandstorms of Gaza this very day. They're used to assassinating small children, putting bullets through their head. Sometimes they assassinate an entire family with bullets through their head. They're used to abusing, sexually and otherwise, prisoners who are at their mercy. They're used to invading little Lebanon in the north of their country, overflying, invading, massacring. They're used to the kind of massacres of Sabra and Shatila in 1982, when, having persuaded the Palestinian menfolk to leave the country for Tunisia, they put the searchlights on in all the surrounding tall buildings and sent their fascist allies, the Phalange, in to go house to murder. They're good at that, the Israelis. They're good at killing children, but they're not so good when it comes to facing men. They have been repeatedly driven out of Lebanon by the Lebanese resistance, and they are presently struggling to get even a foothold in their much-trailed invasion of Lebanon 5.5, or however many times they've done it before. They are not used to fighting at close quarters. They're not used to fighting point blank with young men who are defending their families, defending their rancid refugee camps, defending their territory, their land, the land which is theirs, from people who have come from all over the world in order to steal it and to drive them out. They're good at that, the Israelis. But Iran is something different. They thought they were protected by an iron dome, but the iron dome is made of cardboard, and indeed they're fast running out of cardboard. They have made it a punishable offence with 5 years imprisonment if caught to take images or videos and circulate them of the damage that's being done to Tel Aviv, to Haifa, to Jerusalem, to Eilat and many other parts of their country. But it's a forlorn hope. This is 2026, not 1926. The images are out there. They're just not on the BBC. They're just not on CNN, still less on CBS. And CNN, once Ellison takes over, Pete Hegseth just told us, will be just like CBS. But if you are on social media, any form of social media, you already know that the most powerful weapons in Iran's arsenal are now landing in Israel explosively, with scarcely any anti-aircraft activity visible in the sky. Which is strange because Donald Trump keeps telling us that he's won, that Iran is a broken country and genetically flawed at that. Did you hear that one? It's apparently in the genetics of the Iranians that they are natural-born killers. The kind of thing that Hitler and Goebbels used to say about the Jews. The hammering of Tel Aviv, the hammering of Israel, is an hourly reminder that Trump is lying through his teeth. And having spoken about Hitler and Goebbels, what can we say about Pete Hegseth? There he is, on television, issuing illegal orders which he hopes his troops will follow. No quarter, no mercy. Both of them war crimes, of course. Both of them the crime of invoking and seeking to provoke the commission of war crimes, crimes against the Geneva Conventions, to which the United States has been signed for 90 years. The ultimate war crime at Nuremberg was aggressive war. What but aggressive war is what is being promised at every press conference by Pete Hegseth, the dry drunk, the sleazeball, whose own mother disowned him for his disgraceful treatment of women. These two, gruesome, twosome, Vance has disappeared, Rubio has done his best to disappear. Rubio will be fighting Vance for the Republican nomination in just a year or so from now. They want as little to do with what has turned out to be the worst military, political disaster since Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union, since Operation Barbarossa. Operation Epstein Fury is, of course, on a smaller scale than Operation Barbarossa, but it's going just as badly as Barbarossa went once the defense of Moscow and Leningrad and, of course, Stalingrad began to turn the tide in the Second World War. Having told Keir Starmer and the British that he didn't want people that turn up late for wars, he is now begging Keir Starmer to send his navy to clear the Straits of Hormuz. He even asked China, who told him to get lost. He asked all the European Union countries that he's been insulting and threatening to invade over the last 12 months. He's been insulting, berating, he's been hurling invective at one European country after another, and now He's begging them to send their navy to clear the Straits of Hormuz. Why you would need to do that when you've already won the war is, of course, a very interesting point, and proves that he hasn't, not even remotely, won the war. We'll turn in a minute to what he actually is doing. But the Straits of Hormuz is closed, except to those who pay for their oil in the Chinese currency, yuan, which of course accelerates rapidly the de-dollarization of the world. This is Bretton Woods demolition day. In any case, the Europeans say they're now negotiating with Iran directly so that their tankers can cross the Strait of Hormuz. So the only two countries that will not be able to cross the Strait of Hormuz are the two countries that began the war in the first place, Israel and the United States of America. And if they try any funny business, like in ancient times of bringing the ships onto the land and dragging them across the land and then putting them back in the water, they will of course be sitting ducks. Navies are obsolete. That much I'm prepared to say. The aircraft carriers of the United States, one of them is limping on its way back to the United States after a suspicious fire in the laundry room. Although, again, if you believe that, I've got a bridge in London, etc. The Abraham Lincoln has left the theatre. The other two aircraft carriers are not within 700 kilometers of the theatre. In fact, no American warship is within 700 kilometers of the theatre of operations, which is distinctly strange if Iran's missiles and launchers and drones are all completely destroyed and demolished, just like their nuclear stockpile was destroyed and demolished in Operation Hammer last year, Trump threatening to sue people who claimed that it hadn't all been destroyed, but they still claim now that they are determined to destroy it. You see where I'm going with this. This is a war based on a pack of lies, and it's going catastrophically badly. And as such, it is bringing about in a truncated, rapidly, massively truncated form, the collapse of the United States empire. My religion doesn't preclude me from singing hallelujah to that. One last point. Tucker Carlson may well be under arrest by the end of this show. The world's preeminent broadcaster, the most famous man outside of Donald Trump in the United States of America, the most famous American other than Donald Trump in the whole world, is facing arrest on the reference of Larry Loomer, the she who sits in the Pentagon press room and is a fully signed up member of Benjamin Netanyahu's fan club. She may be the last member. Larry Loomer has reported Tucker Carlson to the CIA, who have been reading Tucker Carlson's texts, who have been through his emails, and who are making a reference right at this minute to the district attorney to call for the arrest of Tucker Carlson. I have a piece of advice for Mr. Carlson. He should right now, before any arrest, declare himself a candidate for the presidency of the United States of America. He would win. He's got everything. He's Kennedy-esque. He's wonderfully loquacious. His oratory is brilliant. The breadth of his experience, enormous. His knowledge of domestic and world politics, without peer. Certainly can't be compared to these giants like Pete Hegseth or Ted Cruz. He is thinking about it, only so he can debate Ted Cruz, he said laughingly. He's a family man. He's a religiously observant and devout man, without wearing it on his sleeve and without allowing it to evince hatred of other people. Tucker Carlson would be a wonderful president of the United States. And if he was to declare now, Donald Trump would look pretty bad signing off on his arrest. What do you think? Well, coming up after a short break is the one and only Vijay Prashad. And we're in for some fireworks with him, I'm sure. Stay tuned. A big thanks to the people who support me on the Patreon page. I really have come to depend on the income from that. It costs £1 a week, not even the price of a cup of coffee in an insalubrious cafe. If you think you could stretch to that, please support me on Patreon, patreon.com/George Galloway. Now, the Moats team have added a tiered system on my Patreon page where you can become an official Moats graduate. How about that? I speak as someone who graduated from nowhere, from the factory floor in Michelin. But you can become a Moats graduate and legend. You can give a regular donation to support the show and my work. You can now upgrade from a mere Patreon to a Moats graduate at £10 a month, as opposed to £5 a month, I think it is. And you can receive official Moats legend status for £20.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, here's the poll for the evening. Should the USA be stripped of the World Cup over Trump's Iran war? Well, that and all these other wars and his war against the American people, their rights, their ancient rights, their constitution, he's making war on everybody. And yet he intends to host the World Cup. He threatened the Iranian players that they shouldn't turn up, as they're perfectly entitled to do, for their own safety. That was a death threat against the Iran international football team. So here's the poll. It's going to be a record again. Almost 60,000 already have voted. Should the USA be stripped of the World Cup over Trump's Iran war? You can vote on my Telegram, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. Remember, if you're watching on the YouTube stream, subscribe to my channel. I've got to get to 1 million subscribers very quickly. Subscribe if you're watching on the YouTube stream, and give a thumbs up to the show. And if you are on the aforementioned creme de la creme, the Patreon page, that's patreon.com/George Galloway, you can also vote there. Well, it is 60,000 votes now. Amazing. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the international number is 0044 203 966 2625. It's always a pleasure for me, and I know for you, to welcome Vijay Prashad, who is the director of Tricontinental and editor of Left Word Books. Very good to see you again, Vijay. We'll talk about all the issues, and I know you no longer live in India, but I don't often get Indian people on the show. So I've got to ask you, was it the worst timing in all history when Modi engaged in that grisly embrace with Netanyahu when Modi betrayed the Iranian ceremonial naval ship that had been a guest of his so that the Americans could sink it for fun? Is Modi just unlucky, or is this going to have very serious political consequences for him?
Well, it's very good to be with you, George, and I'm looking forward to the million subscribers to Moats. I hope that comes very quickly. Very happy to be with you. You know, you've started me off at a very difficult place because, as you know, Mr. Modi and I see eye to eye on almost nothing. And on this particular issue, I think Mr. Modi has betrayed the long relationship, and I mean the century-long relationship between India and Iran. This is a historical relationship. When Ayatollah Ali Khamenei came to India decades ago, he addressed a mass rally in the city of Lucknow. He was a very popular figure in sections of India. India has a relationship of culture as much as of economics with Iran. The language that I grew up speaking is suffused with Farsi words, the language of Urdu and Hindustani. We rely on Farsi to give us a lot of our diction that comes through Arabic. So much of our poetry is inflected with the great traditions of Iran. So this is horrendous to have India betray Iran. It's not the first time. About 20 years ago, the United States leaned on India to vote against Iran at the International Atomic Energy Agency to sanction Iran. It's got to be said, George, and I think people don't recognize this, that Iran is a member of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran has always been a good member of good standing of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Iran has always said it does not want a nuclear weapon. It indeed has not pursued a nuclear weapons program. Meanwhile, India has not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Despite that, has a role in the International Atomic Energy Agency. India has twice exploded nuclear weapons in 1974, in 1998, and is therefore a scofflaw as far as international nuclear policy is concerned. And yet India is allowed to sit in judgment of Iran. And in this case, especially with the ceremonial ship that participated in war games with India in Sri Lankan waters, India allowing this ship to be destroyed and then not willing to pick up the survivors. That was an absolute scandal and a betrayal of a century-long relationship between India and Iran.
I know, Vijay, that you take a close interest in China. The Associated Press are reporting that Chinese naval ships and Air Force warplanes have surrounded Taiwan this evening. And word from Washington is that Trump's much trumpeted state visit to China is now hanging in the balance. Can you tell us any more about what you think might be happening there?
See, it's hard to say, George, and I don't want to say anything that doesn't stay with the facts because, on occasion, China has exactly done this. It is exercising its sovereignty. After all, the United Nations and most countries of the world accept there is one China and Beijing is its capital. China sees the airspace around and over Taiwan as part of Chinese airspace. So every once in a while, perhaps once or twice a year, the Chinese military exercises its sovereignty over Taiwanese airspace. This could be very much what it is doing now. It should not be assumed that this is a prelude to any kind of military action on Taiwanese soil. This might merely be an exercise of sovereignty. I don't want to say anything further than this because we are waiting to see what exactly unfolds. But I would say that this is an indication that the world is in a position of great instability that has been occasioned by the kind of reckless behavior of President Donald Trump. I mean, this reckless behavior begins on the 3rd of January. I'm speaking to you from Caracas, Venezuela. In Caracas, the United States violated Article 2 of the United Nations Charter, came in and seized, kidnapped President Nicolas Maduro, the first combatant Celia Flores. And then a few weeks later, basically mafia threatened the Venezuelan government to stop, with other countries, to stop sending oil to Cuba. Cuba hasn't received oil since early December. I was in Cuba last week. The situation there is dire. We met the Cuban president. We met the leadership in that country. We were informed directly. They are willing to resist any attempt to violate the sovereignty of Cuba. But they said that the situation is dire. They are looking for a way to get fuel to the island. About a third of Cuba's fuel is produced domestically. They're trying to increase the use of solar panels, other forms of energy. But George, it is a very difficult situation. This is a Pandora's box that the United States opened. You're going to violate the UN Charter by violating Article 2. Well, things are going to happen. And then the United States, few weeks after, began this quite horrendous second war against Iran. I don't want people to forget that last year in July, there was a 12-day war, an illegal war by Israel and the United States against Iran. This is the second war in less than 2 years that the United States and Iran have imposed on Iran. Iran did not start this war. Israel and the United States started this war. Well, you have a situation of grave instability. I suppose what the Chinese are thinking is that they have to exercise their sovereignty over Taiwan now before the United States does something quite stupid, like, for instance, placing a nuclear weapon in Taiwan. I wouldn't put it past the Trump administration to try to do something reckless to take the attention away from Iran.
Let's turn then to the big enchilada of the moment, which is the reckless, illegal war to which you've just referred. It was, of course, reckless. It was, of course, illegal. But it was also very stupid, wasn't it? It has backfired spectacularly. It's the least popular war in American history. Something like 16% of the American public support it. Fine young Americans sent to their deaths, American treasure being burned, blood being shed on an enormous scale, war crimes being carried out, the one we talked about with the ship, but the war crime of deliberately bombing the ancient and historic sites, 5,000-year-old sites in Isfahan, the war crime of the little girls who were murdered. It's turned out to be a thoroughgoing disaster for the empire, has it not?
Well, let's go back 50 years, George, and consider that there is a feast of propaganda that says that the United States is good at using its military. In fact, quite the opposite. And let me very quickly run down the record so that we're all on the same page on this. The United States pursued an illegal and grotesque war in Korea. And what you have now is a divided Korea. There was no victory in Korea. In fact, there was merely an armistice in 1953. That war continues. Then move to Vietnam. United States in 1975 had to flee Vietnam because it in fact lost the war. Vietnam now is united, is governed by the Communist Party in Vietnam. United States, after many, many attempts to control Afghanistan, had to basically admit defeat after using every single piece of its arsenal except nuclear weapons. I mean, that war started in 1978 and continued all the way till 2020, 2022. That was a defeat for the United States. United States went to war in Iraq in 2003, but in fact started that war in 1991. Was able to remove Saddam Hussein, but does not control the government in Iraq. Then if you move to Libya, United States and France conducted a grotesque war in Libya, destroyed the country, murdered Muammar Gaddafi, and now has left it a ruin. They don't control it. It is a ruin. Which war as such has the United States ever won in modern times? I don't know. I would like to be told. I know there's a reputation of the United States as being able to use its military and win things. What the United States military is very good at, George, is breaking things. It's not very good at building things or controlling things. It's excellent at breaking things. I'll give them that. They lost the war against Cuba in 1962 when they invaded at the Bay of Pigs. They tried to assassinate Fidel Castro 100 times, maybe more. Some say 900 times. Failed each time. The United States is not that competent. We believe that Israel is very competent. If Israel were very competent, why hasn't Israel been able to destroy the Palestinian resistance, which is fighting it with the minimal amount of arms? You know, there's Israel with every single modern weapon the United States has. And then there are the Palestinians with effectively the kind of guns that you and I might go on a hunt together with. And yet Israel cannot destroy the Palestinians. What people need to understand is wars are not won merely by arms. Wars are won by politics. And if your politics is all wrong, you cannot subordinate people. You cannot bring them to your side. You know, what happened in World War II was, and this is something that people do not accept, but must accept. What happened in World War II was that the Chinese communists and patriots, who lost 25 million people pinning the Japanese down in Asia, the Chinese communists and patriots and the Soviet citizens, 27 million of whom died, and who defeated 80% of the German Wehrmacht, the German army in the Eastern Front. They won the war against fascism together. The United States enters late into the war, loses 500,000 people compared to 52 million Soviets and Chinese. So even in that war, the United States didn't win. It was the politics of anti-fascism that enabled the Soviet Union and the Chinese to defeat Japanese and German fascism, as well as Italian fascism. They won politically. There was enormous cost of life, of course. I don't want to undermine that, but there was a politics. What's the politics in this ridiculous adventure in Iran? What does the United States want to do? They want to put the Crown Prince of Iran, rejected even by people in the diaspora, not a chance. In Venezuela, Maria Corina Machado, an absolute joke of a person. Even Trump decided she was not worth fit for purpose. I mean, what are we talking about, George? Let's first think about, Keir Starmer, unfit for purpose in the UK. Let's think about Emmanuel Macron, unfit for purpose. How are countries like Iran, with thousands of years of history, going to take lessons from such puny politicians as Keir Starmer and Donald Trump? They have their own traditions. They don't need American bombs to place leaders upon their people. They don't need that.
The tectonic plates have already shifted, haven't they? And as a man who theorizes and indeed works for these very changes, the audience will find your perspective valuable. My take on it is that nothing will ever be the same again. Trump cannot win this war. He's desperately trying to get out of it now, after only 2 weeks. And the Jacob Rees-Mogg actually conceded today on television that if Iran wins this war, that the fear of the West will disappear across the globe. He said that as if it was a bad thing. But of course, those of us who have long struggled against empire see it another way. To what extent will these events of the last 2 weeks accelerate the fall of Western hegemony, of the American empire in particular?
Well, I would say, George, that the Western empire has already begun to crumble. It began to crumble substantially, at least in economic terms, in terms of control over raw materials, in terms of control over finance, in terms of control over science and technology. It began to crumble or to fold, to use a metaphor from a card game. It began to fold about 20 years ago, when the financial crisis really hit hard in Western Europe and in the United States. We haven't seen growth rates go above 3 or 4%, except, when there was a recovery after COVID-19. Very poor economic performance. These countries simply not able to produce the kind of new productive forces that we're seeing being developed in India, in China, places like that. I mean, China, of course, we already know about, George, but your viewers will be surprised to learn that India can produce high-speed rail up to 200 kilometers an hour from start to finish in a state-run train factory. I mean, that's extraordinary. A much more efficient train than produced in most of the West. So in that sense, the West has already been put on the back foot. There are two areas of modern human life where the West still maintains some dominance. One is in the area of information control. They have a huge advantage. I mean, they control the undersea cables, they control the satellites, they control so many of the platforms we utilize, the YouTubes, the Facebooks, and so on. They have a lock on information control. They also control the kind of information that gets out there. I mean, that's cracking a little bit. We saw that with the genocide against the Palestinians, but still, BBC is able to exercise considerable hegemony over reporters in Africa, Asia, and so on. We just sort of copy what comes on CNN or BBC or Agence France Presse or Associated Press, Reuters. These are all colonial news outlets, but they are the ones with the money and the power and the influence. This has to be broken down. And thus far, the new emergent centers, India, China, Russia, and so on, haven't really been able to tackle this giant behemoth of the news engine of the West. And the second area of human life where the West still prevails, George, is, of course, weaponry. They have the capacity to destroy cities, but they don't have the capacity to govern. And I think that's the key way we need to understand how the empire has already collapsed. We are not afraid of them and have not been now for several decades. That fear has dissipated. The curtain in front of the Wizard of Oz has fallen. And now we see this little character, this Marco Rubio, wearing shoes that are 2 sizes too big for him, given to him by his puppeteer. I mean, this makes people ridicule the leaders of the West. They are not impressive if they ever were beforehand. I tell people jokingly, I was reading bits and pieces of Angela Merkel's, memoir, and I felt, well, maybe Angela Merkel is the last interesting European leader, at least in my era. After Angela Merkel, I haven't seen anybody who's able to string a sentence together, or at least a couple of them together, that impressed me. She may be a woman of the right, but she had an intelligent upbringing in East Germany, where they actually gave, as she writes in her memoir, young women the confidence to think for themselves, and so on. So, I mean, I say that imperialism or the empire is already in a difficult situation. It is going to go to war. It is going to go to war with information and with its bombs for some period now, until it realizes it needs to sue for peace and recognize that countries like the United States are not special. They are just another place on the planet Earth. They need to trade with the rest of us, treat us with dignity, not try to overthrow the Cuban Revolution, and basically stop behaving that they live on the city that is on the hill, and that they live with the rest of us, and they must solve common problems. We need common solutions to common problems, not confrontation and hierarchy.
Vijay Prashad, a tour de force, as always. Deeply grateful to you. Hope to see you soon. Vijay Prashad, director of Tricontinental and editor of Leftward Books. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls right up to the hour. Stay tuned. Full marks to you for your dogged persistence and your quiet and dignified insistence that you were right and I was wrong. I don't actually recall the clash that we had, but I would have to say that you are being proven right, and I am being proven to have hoped for things that have not transpired. Because I said all along, I repeated it 100 times, that the big enchilada, World War III, an intensification of American involvement in the Ukraine war was more likely to happen under the Democrats, under President Kamala Harris, than under a renewed President Trump. And I'll go to the stake defending that position.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
It's a whopping poll. 65,000 nearly have voted on the poll question. Should the USA be stripped of the World Cup over Trump's Iran war? Well, it's pretty overwhelming, even on X, which is the only place where a negative answer is ever elicited on this poll. But the quantum will be important. If you make this a record poll by voting on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on X, my X, on the YouTube community poll, the YouTube stream, or on patreon.com/George Galloway, you can make this a record test of public opinion. Not many polls are 65,000 respondents. Should the USA be stripped of the World Cup over Donald Trump's Iran war? Let's go to Nigeria for the first call, where Mustafa wants to talk about the war on Iran. Welcome, Mustafa. What do you like to say?
Thank you very much. I'm calling from Nigeria. I'd like to show respect your opinions, your objective journalism.
Mustafa, the line's too bad. We'll try to come back to you and establish a clearer line. Now, big thanks to the Moats donors this week who've been backing the program. Moats.tv, Tim Erskine-Smith, Albert Kelly, Lynette Wells, Camillus Fitzpatrick, and Michael Wilcock. If you'd like to join them, you can go to our website, moats.tv, and click the Donate Now button. I'm hoping that you'll give generously, but I'm insisting that you give £1, $1, or €1. I think I'm worth that. Yaslam is in London on the Forever Wars. Yaslam, welcome.
Yeah, hi, Mike. I hope you hear me clearly.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, hi. I've been following you since Iraq War, the first Iraq War, and your opposition to it, since you was back then in the Labour Party.
Yeah.
And the war in Iran, I did write a book last year, which was published at the beginning of this year, was Behind the Curtains, the real forces shaping our world. It's talking about the oligarchy, control of the Western democracies or the right now what is called the myth of democracy. And a result of it, I did witness personally exactly what's going on in Iran right now, but in Africa, in Sudan. In 23, the war in Sudan started with the same similar reasons, but it's been brought out as a civil war between two generals and so on, but it's not. They just have the same like what they want to do in Iran, that they rally the Kurds in the north, which wouldn't work, but they done that in Sudan by helping the RSF to go against the country, displace the whole country, over 23, between 23 to 24 million people displaced. And the same scenario, if it is followed through, it will be the same for Iran. But the difference between Sudan and Iran is the people in Iran right now, they rallied around their leadership. And that is a huge difference. Now, the oligarch, or the oligarchy that is controlling the United States right now, underneath it, the Zionist groups and the new liberal, and then you have the Anglican with their vision of the return of Christ, and so all of them together, they underestimated Iran dearly. They underestimated their influence in the region. They underestimated that they've been since the start of the revolution in Iran, that is, they've been preparing for this war. And they learned from the war with Iraq a lot. Because if we remember, that war with Iraq is actually version 1 of this war. That is, but they use Iraq for it. And that is the Gulf War. When it started because of the war with Iraq. That is, Iraq wanted compensation. That is, they used the Iraqi army and Iraqi resources and the economy to fight against Iran in behalf of the West and in behalf of the Gulf. And Iraq asked for compensation. And that's why the whole issue of the Gulf War started. But basically, it's all since that time. It's carried on. And Iran is watching and learning and preparing. So it's not as simple.
They have, they've prepared well, they've learned much. I look forward to seeing your book, Yaslam. Send it to us. On the subject of Sudan, my heart literally bleeds for the people of Sudan, a country I know well, a people I know well, and God damn those who have been backing this terrorist fanatic RSF, and we know who they are. They're not backing it now because they're paddling furiously underneath now. They might look like they're gliding like a swan, but they are very worried indeed about the continued existence of their own country, not so much able now to slaughter or enable the slaughter of people in poor Sudan. But of course, your overarching point is absolutely correct. You can say that the war on Iraq is merely now being continued into the war on Iran. There's only one letter of a difference, and it's inconsequential. It's about the United States seeking to continue its domination of the global south, and particularly the lucrative, wealthy, oil-rich parts of the global south. They won in Iraq, but as Vijay just pointed out, it was a Pyrrhic victory. Now the Iraqi people hate them with a vengeance, and the Iraqi government, which might or might not like to kowtow to the United States, is not able to do so. And they're definitely not winning in Iran. Terence, a legend, is on the line in England, in Reading. He wants to talk about Persia. Again, he's a man who knows Persia very well. Terence, welcome back. What would you want to say?
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. I trust you and yours are very safe and happy, and we need you in this country. However,
grace, yes.
We need you in this country. However, your family comes first. But when you first started your monologue, it was very good, and I thought, is this that Iran has got? And I thought you were going to say why I phoned in this evening, like you always sort of beat me to the point. But no, you didn't mention the one thing that Iran spoke Persia, Islamic Republic of Persia, Iran, call it what you like. They have the one thing that the West cannot buy. It's called truth. And 175 little babies killed in a school. They lied. Gaza, 120,000 minimum, I'm suggesting. They lied. Can't defy the truth. And it's all coming back to haunt these subspecies that go around the world stealing and calling themselves great people and pretending America is home of the free. Well, it's run the subspecies aided by the Zionists and the so-called democratic West. And it's all coming back to bite them back on the bum. I don't fear death, like yourself.
It is.
As a Catholic, I don't fear it at all. No, and
well,
I
should say that I'm proud of the Catholic opposition to this war, led by the Pope, of course, but the cardinals, the clergy, the lay activists on social media, they've come out fighting against this Christian Zionism heresy. They've come out fighting against these evangelical Armageddonists. They have come out fighting for Jesus, and I'm very, very proud of them for doing so. The truth, you're right, is an important weapon. It can be temporarily defeated, but I was just thinking when Vijay was talking, Terence, of that old saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight that counts, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Terence, thank you for that. Now you can leave comments on YouTube. Scan the QR code now and leave a comment and I'll read them out. Simbarashe Gomwe says, bring it on, George. Zimbabwe is ready for the show. I will be in Zimbabwe at the end of September, God willing. Hope to see you there. And Winnie8592 sends $9.99. Thank you for that. I'm retired, nearing 80, and I don't have much, but appreciate what you're doing. Love your videos. Winnie, thank you. God bless you. One La Bonbon sends $20 and says, thanks for all you do, George. I'm an American, and I do not support this war. Thank you so much indeed. My very first pet was a budgie called Bonbon, and so I immediately noticed because it came in a box, a Bonbon box. Hoopsaholic 1888, that means he's a Celtic man, says we'll have a decent European leader when George becomes president of the People's Free Republic of Scotland. Well, you never know. I might be too old, but you never know. I might accept the draft for that. Christina Hines 407 says Vijay Prashad is speaking well on Moats TV. He's well informed and articulate. Thank you, Vijay, for conveying the truth. He's a truly remarkable man, a wonderful orator. Colonel Richard is back in Texas, and he wants to talk about the real top sponsor of terrorism. Colonel, good evening.
Good evening, George. That last caller, he spoke about the multiple lies. And, of course, as we hear from politicians in America and in Europe, that Iran is the number one sponsor of terrorism in the world. Well, based on some statistics that Larry Johnson has thrown out, I decided to do a little deep dive research into FBI files. And going back to 1979, when the Islamic Republic overthrew the Shah, through the end of 2025, in America, there have been 158 incidents that the FBI has classified as terrorist acts. The number of perpetrators associated with Shia Islam is 2. All the rest are Sunni or homegrown American terrorists.
Yeah, Trump is either stupid or he thinks we are. Who knew that MAGA would go to war with Iran to support what he called the gays? He said the Iranians throw the gays off the tops of buildings. We protect the gays. That'll have come as news to many gay people in America, but that's not the most significant thing. The most significant thing is that he was confusing the actions of ISIS and Al-Qaeda Sunni fanatics with the Shiite Iranian Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic of Iran has never thrown a gay off a building. Never. He confused or deliberately sought to confuse us by talking about beheadings. He said the Iranians behead people, but they don't behead people. When they execute people, they hang them. But I'll tell you who does behead people. Saudi Arabia, next door, which is Donald Trump's best friend. I'll tell you who does behead people. The ISIS and Al-Qaeda that the United States have supported to the nth degree for at least, and I say at least, maybe longer, but at least the last 20 years. And just put them in power. Trump's words, not mine, in the former Syrian Arab Republic. Either Trump is just a moron, or he thinks the rest of us are morons. Colonel Richard, thanks for that. I need to take a very short break because right after it, it's the Pulitzer Prize winner, Chris Hedges, and you definitely want to hear him. Stay tuned. I'll be right back. My grandson, Sean, who's answering the phones tonight, had his first 1 million view tweet about Gaza, and I predict great things from him. So we're not going to go away. We believe in the next life. We believe that we will all be judged on what we did in this life, and that will determine our fate. And so we face whatever we have to face, if not with equanimity. Can't say that the experience was one that one can feel sanguine about. It was genuinely horrific, and I'll never forget it. It was the more horrific for being unexpected by me. I never believed that someone like me, of my age, and with my background and with my position in British politics, would ever be told that I was being held under the Terrorism Act. I'm not unmoved by it, but I'm certainly undeterred by it.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Well, I always used to say, what a pity Chris Hedges wasn't at the State Department. But if he was at the State Department, he would have had to resign now long ago. But luckily enough, he gives us the benefit of his wisdom instead. Pulitzer Prize winner, former head of the New York Times Middle East Bureau, uniquely placed for a perspective on this unfolding disaster. Chris, welcome back again to the mother of all talk shows. Can I start with a domestic question, though? It seems clear to me, beyond contradiction, that Donald Trump has completely lost the plot. He's launched this war of choice. It's gone disastrously. Few Americans support it. What are the political consequences in the U.S. of this thoroughgoing disaster and petrol at $9 a gallon in California?
The political consequences are dire for Trump. He was tricked, there's no other word for it, by the Israelis, who have been lobbying for 3 decades for the U.S. to attack Iran. Every administration, Republican, Democrat, Bush, Obama, Biden, have, because of Pentagon, huge resistance within the Pentagon, have refused. And I think, it's supposition, but I think it appears that Netanyahu quite skillfully played on Trump's ignorance, telling him that this would be like taking out Maduro in Venezuela. The regime, if you kill the supreme leader, would capitulate. This, of course, is a total misreading of Iran, as all of us who worked in Iran could have told him. But it worked on Trump, who's not very bright and doesn't know much about world affairs, and of course is surrounded by sycophants who just did not want to tell him the truth. I think, interestingly enough, the one person who apparently did step up and say this was not a militarily winnable conflict was the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who Trump appointed. General Kane actually brought him out of retirement. He was a 3-star, made him a 4-star. He had expressed support in the military for Trump. That's because, of course, that's the only criteria by which Trump appoints people around him. And yes, it did not go as planned. I mean, I think we also have to understand that the Israeli goals and the American goals are different. The Americans want regime change. Israel wants to turn Iran into a failed state, like Syria. It's what it's doing to Libya. It's what was done to Libya. It's what it's trying to do now to Lebanon. So they're different goals. It just wants to fragment and destroy Iran in much the same way it did with Iraq. But you're right. This is the Iranians. They are the ones who will determine when this ends at this point. And they know that they can inflict serious economic punishment. That gets into what I think is their very astute strategy, which is asymmetric economic warfare. It's effective. It works. They have a strategy. The Americans don't. And the consequences will be dire as the economic reverberations, which are already begin to be felt, become more and more acute.
But do the American people notice that Trump has declared, I think it's 9 times, that he's already won the war, and yet his warships cannot approach the coast, cannot clear the strait, and Israel is being pulverized on an hourly basis? So these two things don't compute. If Iran has no rockets left, no launchers left, and is militarily and politically defunct, these other two things could not be true, but they are.
Well, yeah, but I mean, non sequiturs are kind of color just about everything that Trump says. He can contradict himself within the hour. I think he's clearly, and those around him are desperate. I think they've realized they have fallen into a very deadly trap. There is no exit ramp for them. I mean, the American media, I think, has failed to understand what's happening. They keep asking the question, when will Trump, will he declare victory? Will he walk away? What will be enough? Well, they don't understand that the Americans are no longer determining the outcourse of this conflict. It's the Iranians. And the Iranians have been very clear that they have understood, and that is again the folly of the U.S. administration, that there's no appeasing this the U.S. government, especially under Trump, who attacked them twice. It turns out if you take June and February 28th, while they were in the midst of supposed negotiations, the Iranians are willing to accept a lot of pain because they will accept pain, but they know that they can inflict tremendous damage, not only on the Gulf neighbors that have allowed the U.S. to build bases throughout the region, on the pretense, of course, that these U.S. bases would protect them in the event of a conflict with Iran. In fact, they're just magnets for Iranian attack, and all of the interceptors, which are rapidly being depleted, have been shipped post-haste to Israel. So it has the regional effects will be catastrophic for the United States, but the global effects, I mean, the longer the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, the more, even though they're releasing reserves and everything else, the world economy is going to fall at least into a recession, if not a depression.
Just one last domestic question then. The pro-Israel lobby already plummeting in support in the United States. First time ever a poll showing more people sympathized with the Palestinian side than with the Israeli side. The lines just finally crossed in the last week or two. If this is widely perceived to have been a disastrous war of choice, almost certainly as a result of trickery or blackmail or both by Israel, that's going to be catastrophic for support for Israel in the United States going forward, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Israel, the genocide itself, which over 2 years, of course, these images have, coupled with Israeli lies, of course, have really imploded the visage or the veneer that Israel was able to put on, certainly within the United States. If you look at AIPAC, which holds annual meetings in Washington, you had both Republicans and Democrats fighting all over each other to be keynote speakers or prominently positioned to speak. The Democrats won't touch it. They're small gatherings. Yes, so the Israel lobby, it still wields, of course, tremendous financial power. But I think this war, it's already in steep, the power of the Israel lobby is in steep decline. The prestige of Israel is eviscerated. But I think you're right. This war will, I think, see a kind of backlash against both Israel and the United States, because the fact is this is an Israeli war. I mean, Rubio admitted as much. He said that Israel was planning to attack, and if the United States didn't join them, he got slapped down for this, then U.S. bases would be hit, and so they had to, but it just shows who's driving this project. It's an Israeli project, and you could argue the Iraq War was pretty much an Israeli project as well. And yeah, I think you're right. I think that this will, really, really hollow out support for Israel.
Now, turning to the other areas on which you have considerable expertise, Israel itself has never taken a pounding like this.
Yeah.
Disappearing leaders, hourly ballistic thumps, which are now almost all getting home, suggesting that the anti-missile technology given by the United States, the Iron Dome, is turning out to be a bit of a paper dome. The Israelis have never suffered like this before. 12-day war, they did take a bit of punishment, but this is much worse. And the economic damage, the damage to Israel's energy reserves, the damage to its institutions, police headquarters, Mossad headquarters, the loss of generals and senior officers. What's the likely impact on Israel and its conduct if this war continues to go south for them?
Well, that in some ways is a terrifying question because Israel has at least 300 nuclear warheads, and Netanyahu is insane enough to use one. I mean, much of it is supposition, as you know, George, because the censorship in Israel is draconian. You, just for picking up your phone and filming the aftermath of a strike, is a criminal offense. But it does appear that Israel has taken severe hits. I mean, the Iranians were quite astute in terms of, first of all, they didn't really target Israel at the beginning. Israel was hit, but they took out the radar stations, especially the big U.S. $1 billion, but the other radar stations as well, which renders the United States and Israel, if not blind, certainly unable to track incoming missiles and drones effectively. The Iranians use their older stock to deplete the interceptors, but even the interceptors can't deal with their hypersonic missiles. And then the Iranians have said very recently that now they will target Israel. How significant is the damage? By all reports, it is, as you correctly point out, extremely significant, but we're not allowed to see it. I mean, there is just total censorship now within Israel. But of course, if there is total censorship, one can assume that the damage is quite unique. I mean, Israel is a postage-sized country. It's tiny. Iran is the size of Western Europe, with a population of 92 million. That's, more than 10 times the population of Israel. And they have, by all accounts, buried their most sophisticated missiles underground. I mean, when the Iranians show footage of them being launched, what's interesting is they kick up clouds of dust. So clearly they're buried. I mean, you can't see them from the air. And the Iranians have prepared for a long time, especially after June 12th. They realized they have prepared for a long war of attrition. And a long war of attrition is one that Israel cannot win.
But they still are murdering people in Lebanon. In fact, proportionately, they've killed far more Lebanese than they have Iranians. Lebanon, an even smaller country than Israel, has lost almost 1,000 dead in this last 14 or 15 days. But they're not finding it easy going in their attempt to occupy right up to the Litani River, a border you and I know and remember very well. That was always the border they dreamt of until they were driven out by the Lebanese resistance, who are fighting them every inch of the way now.
Yeah, it's overreach. I mean, they have enough problems with Iran. But of course, Hezbollah has reacted and delivered punishing strikes, often in coordination with Iran. And so Israel is doing what it technologically is capable of doing, which is carrying out saturation bombing and driving, probably at this point, hundreds of thousands of Lebanese, displacing hundreds of thousands of Lebanese. No, they can do a lot of damage from the air, both with their missile systems and with their air force. But you can't win a war like that, not only in Iran, but also in Lebanon. And I mean, that is the big question. Will the United States, I mean, the Iranians would love to see the United States carry out a ground invasion in Iraq. I find it unlikely, not because Trump or Hegseth, who are kind of like Dumb and Dumber, have any idea, but because the Pentagon is so reticent, has always been reticent to go to war with Iran for all of the reasons that we now see. So on the one hand, yes, it's a lot of punishment, a lot of damage. On the other hand, we have to read these strikes as acts of desperation.
Iran's war aims include the liberation of the Palestinian people. If this war continues to be a failure, I think we can describe it as a failure up to now, how will the Palestinian situation be affected? Will this propel the need for justice for Palestine further up the international agenda?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point because Iran has been very steadfast in terms of its support for Palestinian rights. I would say Iran has three major, when it comes time to negotiate, and they will decide when that time comes. And it's a time when the Western Europe and the United States will be inflicted with a lot of economic pain. Obviously, the sanctions have to be lifted. Obviously, there have to be guarantees that Iran will not be attacked again. This is preemptive war. That's a criminal act of aggression. That's a war crime, both in the 12-day assault in June and in this assault since February 28th. So they want those guarantees. But I think the Palestinian issue is up there, probably number 3 on the list. And it will be fascinating, although, of course, the suffering that will be entailed until we get there is awful, but it will be fascinating to watch. But yeah, I think that Palestine will be one of the issues that the Iranians bring up.
Now, moving towards the Gulf, how do you think these Gulf monarchies, to give them a polite name, are feeling now? After all, they housed the Americans, they showered the Americans with diamonds and pearls, they allowed them to site weapon systems and surveillance platforms, radars in their countries. And, you know, the Genovese crime family usually deliver when they get you ensnared in their protection racket. But Trump ain't no Genovese. He just turned and moved everything that could be moved to defend Israel and left these monarchies to their own devices. They're at the mercy of Iran. Iran could destroy them right now if it wanted to, and no one could stop them.
Yeah, all Iran has to do is take out their desalination plants. That would engender a humanitarian crisis, including in Saudi Arabia. I think Riyadh depends almost entirely on desalination for its water. Well, deeply betrayed as they were. They weren't consulted. This isn't. Trump went to war, never bothered to discuss it with them, and they pay the price. And then all these U.S. bases have failed to protect them. As I said earlier, they're just magnets for Iranian attacks. So you already saw, I think a reticence within the Gulf, Saudi Arabia making overtures to Pakistan, Pakistan saying that Saudi Arabia would be covered by Pakistan's nuclear umbrella. You already saw a movement, but I suspect that once this is all over, and that of course, what Iran has also made clear, you have to get these bases out of your countries and you will not be a target. The United States will try and push it after this conflict, whenever that is, the other way by saying, well, you just need more U.S. air power and more bases and more. But I think the sense of betrayal runs deep. I think that potentially this could see the United States control or hegemony within the region eviscerated.
Well, let's turn then to that big question that you just implicitly posed. When this is all over, when will it be over? You say there's no off-ramp, but every war in it has to end sometime. How do you think this one is going to end?
Well, there's no off-ramp for the Trump administration. They're not the ones who are going to determine when this ends. That is up to the Iranians. And that has thrown, I think, both the Israeli government and the U.S. government, which didn't predict this, didn't anticipate this, into a kind of panic. And the Iranians know that they have a chokehold on not just 20% of the world's oil, which passed through the Strait of Hormuz. And also, let's be clear, the idea that NATO or U.S. warships are going to protect tankers and cargo ships is ridiculous. The Strait of Hormuz is only 21 kilometers wide, but the actual sea lane is even less. They don't even need missiles, like just artillery pieces. It'd be like a a duck shoot, a turkey shoot. It'd be like the Russian Imperial Navy deciding to attack the Japanese, who they held with the same kind of racist disdain that the Americans hold the Iranians, and the entire Russian Navy force was sunk. And that's what would happen in the Strait of Hormuz, which, of course, U.S. naval commanders understand. So the potential for damage, for really inflicting significant pain, economic pain, on it's to be worse in Europe, actually, because the United States is a large oil producer. But the ability to inflict significant pain is real. And they will wait until that pain forces their adversaries, Israel and the United States, to their knees. But that could be a long way away. That could be weeks away. I mean, the Iranians say they are prepared for a conflict that will last months.
Is there any role for Russia and China as mediators? Saudi Arabia has already an agreement with Pakistan, but also with China. It's paying in yuan for Chinese goods, for example. The Russians are far better placed in that area than they ever used to be in former times. I was in Abu Dhabi when President Putin visited, and to say he got a royal welcome would be to understate it. They turned the sky red, white, and blue in honor of Putin. Is this a way, do you think, that this could be brought to an end with significant concessions being made to Iran, including on the Palestine front?
Yeah, but the United States is going to have to really feel a lot of pain before that happens. And Russia and China are determined to make that pain felt. So there's pretty credible reports that both the Russian and the Chinese have provided significant intelligence support to the Iranians, allowing them through satellite systems to essentially see American deployments, American ships. Remember, the Iranians helped the Russians with drone technology in the war with Ukraine. This will be repaid. I mean, I don't know why anyone would be surprised. What the Russians are doing with the Iranians is precisely what the United States did with the Ukrainians, the United States and Europe, of course. And I think the Chinese, I don't think I mean, at what point do we reach the transfer of weapon systems, especially missile systems, these hypersonic missiles, which are very effective, in particular against Israel. But there's clearly going to be support. There already is support, but there clearly will be sustained support on the Russia-China front, because the Putin and the Chinese leadership are aware that the United States seeks to limit the power, the hegemony, the reach, the economic potential of both Russia and China, and have been attempting to do so. So it's in their interests. It's not surprising that they would support Iran to make sure Iran can keep the conflict going, because the longer it goes, the more Israel and the United States are backed into a corner. I mean, especially Israel. I think you're right. I think Israel is really getting pounded. I think there is significant. I think they're probably. I don't think they anticipated it. I think that they are probably in shock. I worked in Israel. I've never seen, and there's always been military censorship, by the way, which we had to abide by. But I've never seen anything this draconian. I mean, they're obviously, they want the outside world to be completely blind to what is happening. So, yeah, Russia and China, and I don't know why anyone would be surprised with this, will attempt to facilitate or make it possible for Iran to continue this conflict, because the longer it continues, the more the United States and Israel are degraded.
Finally, Chris, and I'm grateful for your time. In the last couple of hours, Associated Press are reporting Chinese movements around Taiwan. Some say surrounding Taiwan, overflying with warplanes and throwing a cordon effectively with warships. Do you think this is just an assertion of Chinese sovereignty, or might it portend the sort of development that would certainly rain on Donald Trump's forthcoming Beijing parade?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this would be the time to do it. The United States, all of its assets have been concentrated in the Gulf and in the areas off Iran. So if I'm not an expert at all. I don't know a lot about China. I never worked there. But if you're going to strike, this would be the moment you want to strike, because there's not much the United States can do.
Well, even South Korea has been left without anti-missile technology.
That's right. No, that's a very important. They've had to strip.
Kim Jong-un is in a good mood.
Yeah.
They'll be hoping
No,
Kim
but
is
that
in a good
shows you
mood.
how depleted the stockpiles are. And of course, once these interceptors are used up, you can't make them quickly. And once they're effectively, those stockpiles are gone, Iran can just lob anything it wants at Israel, and there's not much Israel can do.
Quite so. Chris Hedges, the master, thanks for that master class. And the audience have enjoyed it too, I can tell you. Let me take a quick break, and then your calls right up until Gayatri's social media news roundup. We'll need to find a snappier way of expressing that. Gayatri's spot. What about that? Stay tuned. I'll be right back.
The 1897 edition of War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Read by George Galloway. Available only on Patreon.
The cylinder was artificial, hollow, with an end that screwed out. Something within the cylinder was unscrewing the top. Good heavens, said Ogilvy. There's a man in it, men in it, half roasted to death, trying to escape. At once, with a quick mental leap, he linked the thing with the flash on Mars. The thought of the confined creature was so dreadful to him that he forgot the heat and went forward to the cylinder to help turn. But luckily, the dull radiation arrested him before he could burn his hands on the still glowing metal.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
$70,000 votes on the poll. Is that a record? My colleagues behind the glass will tell me. Should the USA be stripped of the World Cup over Trump's Iran war? You've got 5 minutes to cast your vote, but the votes so far are pretty overwhelming. Should the USA be stripped of the World Cup? Telegram, 95% yes. X, 90% yes. YouTube community poll, 91% yes. The stream, 91% yes. And the Vanguard, my Patreon supporters, 100% yes. Let's go to Ken in the United States on Iran. Welcome, Ken. What would you like to say?
Well, Jimmy Dore said you're one of the brightest minds on the internet, so I just have 2 questions for you, and I was hoping you might be able to answer them.
Sure.
The first question is, do you believe the United States has a way out of this war? Can they save face? Do they have a way out of the war?
Let me deal with that one first. I really don't think they have a way out. Trump will, at some stage, perhaps when oil is $150 a barrel, or even $200, or as Bloomberg speculated today, even $500 a barrel is, of course, a distinct possibility. Trump will say, that's it, I'm not going to bomb anymore. And he may, dangerously, pivot wildly to another theater of conflict, perhaps Cuba in the Caribbean. Or he may say, if his trip to China goes ahead, I'm going to stop now with respect to my Chinese hosts, or some other crazy alibi like that. But that's not the end of the war. The Iranians will continue to fight it. As you just heard Chris Hedges, definitely one of the brightest minds in America, say that the war isn't over until Iran say that it's over. A second possibility is that Trump asks Putin to see what terms the Iranians would settle for, to stop sending their missiles to Israel and stop destroying. Now they've destroyed all the American bases. The American bases are all empty. They've been evacuated. So much for the protection racket. But if Iran now starts on commercial interests of the United States in the region, Trump might very well say to Putin, see what terms you can get me. And if you can help me, I'll help you in relation to the Ukraine war. I can't think of any others off the top of my head. Ken, what about you? Have you got an idea?
Well, I don't know how we can save face on this at all. But my second question is this. The internet said that Netanyahu is hiding in a bunker somewhere. What is your whole take on the Netanyahu story?
I think he's dead. We've now had two feeble AI attempts to prove otherwise. Neither of them convinced me. And looking at social media, I don't think they convince many other people either. From the never-ending coffee that gets drunk but doesn't go down, that's frothing and overflowing but doesn't spill, to the hand going in the pocket, in which the pocket literally swallows the hand. It wasn't the hand going in the pocket, it was the pocket going on the hand. And the lack of clarity about when this was, and so on. Him missing critical meetings of the political military apparatus. I believe that Netanyahu is dead.
Okay, thank you very much,
did
George.
you faint?
No,
Thank you, my friend.
I don't want to.
Nice to talk to you.
Thank you.
Welcome. A big thanks to another group of this week's top Moat supporters: Andrew Tarr, Sean Christopher, George Barney, Elle Findlay, and Zach Ragunwala. A big thanks for your generosity, and a big thanks to those who I'm sure are going to leave at least $1, €1, or £1 on the donate button on moat.tv. You can either leave a one-off, or you can have a recurring donation. Both are extremely welcome. Well, I'm a long way from Scotland these days, but we've got a call from Esther in Scotland. War is not in Jesus' name. Amen to that, Esther. What would you like to say?
Amen, George. Good evening, sir. Good evening. Thanks for taking my call. I'll be really quick. I'm really not happy with this whole it's a holy war, etc. No. My Bible tells me he's the Prince of Peace. The Prince of Peace. I'm not, even in, because what it does is lumps all Christians in the same boat, and we're not. There's over 45,000 different denominations, even within Christianity alone. And that's basically people taking their interpretation of that scripture and building a church on it, basically. So it's no. I find it offensive. What I think it is about tearing down the old world.
Some of those churches are very big business, Esther. Some of those churches are very big business, and the pastors usually got a private jet in the United States. You're right. It is blasphemy. It is sacrilege. And this Hegseth, who's the least Christian man in America, a man whose own mother denounced him, washed her hands of him because of his revolting behavior, a dry drunk, if he is still dry, a man who's spitting evil every night at the lectern and doing it all in the name of Jesus. You couldn't make it up, Esther.
They've took that in the scripture and ran with it. But as far as I'm concerned, they're tearing down this world for their new world. Every system, everything down to our energy. I mean, we've got nut jobs in the UK ramming net zero down our throat. These oil places getting bombed and everything. It's only as far as I'm concerned, it's only forcing us to use renewables even more here. It's just. Well, what I'm most concerned about, is the narrative.
Esther, we've got a house in Scotland, and we tried to order from China. We tried to order heating oil for the family members that are living in the house, and they used to do a same-day service. Sometimes it was the next day. They told my wife when she called up, yes, you can order heating oil, but it'll be 4 weeks before it arrives. So God knows, I hope the weather is improving in Scotland. Esther, thank you very much indeed. Comments from Isiolo County Chronicles. Al Jazeera has decided to take the side of the US and Israel. I really don't think that's fair. It might. I can't watch the Arabic edition here, but I am watching the English edition, and their coverage is actually very good, unless something's changed in the last few hours. Lugasaid X says, why doesn't Trump ask the Israeli Navy for help? A very good point. Why is it American Marines that are going to invade Iran? What about the Israeli army? What about the Israeli Navy? And of course, there's no chance of either of those turning up. Cheese Rock USA says, who gave Israel nukes? Well, that's a very good question, because some of the material and some of the expertise was stolen from the United States. But Germany paid for it. It was revealed today. The German government paid Israel to acquire and develop illegal and secret nuclear weapons. And the French helped with the technology also. Neil GZ sends £5 Thank you, Governor. And says, why has Tulsi Gabbard not resigned yet? I feel she's missed a trick if she has presidential hopes. Lake Vacum sends $19.99. Thank you for that. If they can't steal Ukraine's, Russia's or Iran's resources through war, they still profit from destroying the economy. Let's go to Rossendale in England, where Tayyab wants to talk about the Middle East. Tayyab, welcome. Go ahead.
Hello, George. How are you?
By the grace of God, good. Thank you very much.
I want to talk about the situation in the Middle East. Currently, with all the bases almost being destroyed, and eventually, inshallah, there'll be no more resistance left from the Americans. Do you think it'd be a good idea or the possibility Iran could invade the UAE and Bahrain?
Well, I did see an Iraqi expert, a professor, talking the other day, and his prediction was that Iraq will take Kuwait, that Bahrain will be taken by Iran. It's their co-religionists, of course. That Saudi Arabia will take the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar will return to Oman. These were his words, and of course they sound fanciful on first hearing. But all bets are off now, Tayyip. Everything's turned upside down. International law no longer exists. The American power is at an end in the Middle East, and they'll be suing for peace very soon, as I told the last caller from the United States. So, you know, all Iraqis believe that Kuwait belongs to them, that it was stolen from them by the British Empire, as indeed it was. So that wouldn't be a big surprise. The Saudis feel that the Emirates was stolen from them by the British, which it was. So that wouldn't be a big surprise either. And Oman would be quite a country if it joined with Qatar. What's your view, Tayyip?
Well, my view is, well, hoping for Jordan, for the people to rise up there, and this is the best time, as most of the bases have been taken over. All that is needed a little push, and Iran to actually hit a few more places in Jordan now, so this can start. And also, the American people, don't they see or realize that Epstein is actually, Netanyahu, the late Netanyahu, is actually blackmailing him with the Epstein files? Don't they?
Well, I think a great number of Americans, definitely a majority, but maybe a two-thirds majority, believe that Trump did this to cover up the Epstein affair. I'm increasingly of the view that Epstein's still alive, and if he is still alive, he'll be in Israel. With a bit of luck, he'll get an Iranian missile up his jacksie, if I can put it that way. Tayyip in Rossendale, many thanks. Now you can download or stream the weekly Moats podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate it and leave a review. It really helps. This week, the podcast is in the top 10 for politics in Bahrain, Ghana, Lebanon, and Chile, and in the top 30 for politics in Kuwait, Pakistan, and Russia. When are we going to break into the Chinese charts is what I'm asking. Let's go back to Mustafa in Nigeria, whose line was too difficult earlier. Mustafa, welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Good evening to you.
Can you hear me, sir? Evening.
Loud and clear. Loud
So,
and
first
clear.
of all,
Go
I have
ahead.
to say that, yeah. Awesome. So I love your show, and I love you, sir, because you're doing really great. Your journalism is fearless, it's objective, it's very impressive. So I have about 3 points that I want to just broach. The first one is the possibility of Trump or Netanyahu nuking Iran, maybe because they seem to be unable to destroy Iran's missile capability and drone capabilities, as well as their inability to eliminate the nuclear stockpiles. So that's the first point.
Yeah. Give me the other two.
And then, yep. And then my second point is about Iran's military posture. So I'm not a military analyst. I just have this kind of view about Iran's military abilities. Right now, I feel like Iran's military capability is just poised in or is concentrated on missiles and drones, whereas the U.S. and Israel use substantial naval and air power against Iran. So if you look at the strike numbers, the ones of U.S. and Israel against Iran is in the tens of thousands, whereas that of Iran is quite lesser because Iran doesn't have the air power over Israel and over the United States.
No, look, let me cut you short just because of the hour. On that latter point, the United States has naval assets in the region, but they're too frightened to go anywhere near the country. I told you earlier, there is not a single American warship, let alone an aircraft carrier battle group, within 700 kilometers of the Iranian coast. And that's for a reason, because you imply that only missiles and only drones, well, actually, since the invention of dynamite, the development of drone military technology is the most significant development. Just listen to what I said there. There's been no change more important since dynamite was invented. Drones and missiles are the future. Navies are very last century. And aircraft carriers are floating coffins. That's why one of them is now on its way back to the United States after a fire in the laundry room, and it's why the others are 700 kilometers away. Secondly, if through any means an invasion of Iran were to take place, well, tens of millions of Iranians would be waiting for them. So as IRGC, the foreign minister, said, I'm finding him increasingly a superstar, I must say. IRGC said, when asked, are you worried about an American invasion? He said, no, we're waiting for them. And he wasn't exaggerating. Now, at 9 o'clock on Tuesday, you can tune in to Call the Doctor. That's my parliamentary colleague Chris Williamson and Dr. Bob Gill, the great GP and campaigner for Britain's National Health Service. They're presenting episode 17. They examine the latest health issues and developments, streaming live on YouTube and Rumble. That's Call the Doctor, Tuesday, the 10th of March at 9 p.m. Syed is in London on Iran. Syed, welcome.
Thank you, George. George, God bless you and your family. We met a few years ago in London, and you were with your family. We had a little chat. And one of the things I want to continue regarding your conversation with Mustafa is that Persian, they did deal in the white area, and they fight along the mountain. If you see the Iranian big cities, they are all located around the mountains. So this is one of the things that when the war happens, they used to run to the mountains and defend themselves very well. This is one of the things that just I wanted to mention. But the main things that I would like to speak to you and ask your opinion is that please help me out here. Iran at the moment, they're holding themselves really well in front of Israel and what's happening with the United States. And they were hitting their bases in Persian Gulf. And I am hoping that they come to the sit down and having a negotiation. And there was a lot of points that Iranian, I hope they start coming to the negotiation. They take this point, and one of them is a sanction, and there are a few other things. But my concern and my wish is that to get United States out of the Persian Gulf and completely an Arab country, and sort out Israel somehow. If the United Nations or the other country, they want to interfere to limit them, that they don't start expanding themselves and invading and killing and being a war machine and bring the stability. And I'm hoping that all these Arab countries, all these Muslims, they come and sitting and then negotiating with Iran, and they starting doing business, and the area, this region, be quiet, and hopefully then, as you know it much better than all of us, we are ordinary people, but you have, God bless you, a lot of information and connection, then put the UAE in their place or whatever, I mean, peace they can bring with them, then they have to look after the Sudan. As you know, the Sudan is at the moment is very mess regarding the Israeli and UAE and American.
Yes. Syed, I'll have to stop you only because my good wife has arrived and I have to make time for her. But it's very important, the points that you've made. First of all, there will be no negotiation directly with the Americans. Of that, I'm certain. They've been attacked twice, last year and in the last few weeks, by the Americans in the middle of negotiations. So there will never be trust again in the good faith of American negotiators, let alone Witkoff and Jared Kushner, who Trump says were the people that persuaded him to do this. Somebody else will have to conduct negotiations on a settlement of this matter. And the Iranian negotiating position will be very tough indeed. Now, I can't speak for them, and I don't know what I'm about to say is their position, but I'm experienced enough to take a guess at what the Iranian negotiating position will be. In no particular order of importance, here are the main points. First of all, a complete lifting of sanctions on Iran. Second, the complete evacuation of American military presence throughout the entire Gulf region. Thirdly, reparation for the damage and death and destruction that Iran has suffered as a result of an illegal war. And now Trump can either pay that himself or he can get his friends in the Gulf to pay it for him, but the sum will be eye-wateringly significant. Then there's the issue that you raise, that the Palestinians will not be abandoned. The Lebanese resistance will not be abandoned. The government in Yemen will not be abandoned. And guarantees for the safety and security of all of those will be demanded by Iran. All of this adds up to a very bitter pill, a very, very difficult sip of poison for the United States to take. But if they don't take it, the war will continue. And as they are now at the disadvantage, and as the momentum is very clearly with Iran, at one point they're going to have to take a drink of that poison. Syed, thanks very much. I'm joined by the woman without whom the news wouldn't be the news. Here's Gayatri. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Right, two things. First of all, tonight's poll, we asked, should the U.S. be stripped of the World Cup over Trump's Iran's war? Well, this is probably the second biggest poll that we've had on the modes, so incredible for that reason. On that matter, there was a former Japanese football player, now a manager, called Keisuke Honda. He played, amongst others, for AC Milan. He had lost his advertising deal in the U.S. because he voiced support for the Iranian national team to participate in this World Cup. I mean, imagine, he's a professional athlete and he's actually voicing for unity, right? Inclusivity. And he lost his contract over that. Imagine, next thing you know, or everyone cheering for a non-Western team will lose any deal, right? So over to something a bit completely different, but it is rather urgent because on Tuesday, 17th of March, in your former parish, in the Scottish Parliament, they will have what's called the suicide bill. It's not a small matter because it's about assisted dying. It's basically the state authorizing doctors and medical workers to help you die. All right, so this is a big debate, and it's very important because this bill allows, for example, teenagers under every prescribed diseases, including anorexia, to go for assisted dying. Imagine how many teenagers are suffering under anorexia, and then they have the option to actually just go for it altogether, as well as pills by post. I mean, everything to make it easier for everyone to end their life. Disabled people. I mean, lives are being ended everywhere. People are being murdered and killed. And now the state in Scotland, the Scottish Parliament, will want to help you in this. All right? So in Britain, I mean, one Brit a week actually travels to Switzerland for what is known as suicide tourism, to die there. And this is 6 times higher since 2005. But what is that because of? It's because they all just want to end their life, or because their life has become more and more difficult. In the Netherlands and in Canada, the rates, the proportion of suicide-assisted dying is between 4 and 5% from the overall number. I mean, these are huge numbers. And to contrast that with the birth rate in the UK, it's 1.4 child per woman. And this is the lowest since the record began in 1938. Over to you.
Well, I'm deeply affected by what you have said. I hadn't realized the vote was quite that quick. And of course, it's not the only part of the killing industry that the state is now involved in. In the House of Lords next week, they're voting on a proposal to allow abortion up until birth. That is to say, a baby on the day it is due to be delivered can be murdered in state-approved abortion clinics. It is such a monstrosity, you imagine that it could not possibly pass. But the vote is on a knife edge. And you know whose votes are going to be critical? The 17 bishops of the Anglican Church of England. And when I was told this by people campaigning against it, I didn't quite know what to say, because could there be any doubt that these 17 bishops will turn up and vote against? They're bishops of the Christian church. And is there any doubt that they're going to turn up and vote to kill this measure, this monstrosity? Well, it turns out there is a doubt. And the campaigners around the issue are desperately pleading with 17 bishops who have a seat in Parliament, because they're the state church, the establishment church, the Church of England, begging them, A, to turn up, and B, to vote the right way. And there's a doubt over it. In Scotland, I've followed this debate with horror. It's glee in the voices and the faces of the proponents of a cult of death. Shakespeare said on the issue of suicide in Hamlet, "The Lord hath set his cannon against self-slaughter." Self-slaughter. But in this case, the state is going to slaughter you at your request. Euthanasia is what it is. And your kid can do it without your permission because she's got anorexia. Why not fix the anorexia? Why not fix palliative care for people that are in pain? and under end-of-life treatments? Why not make the health service better? Why not make life better? Why not make poverty better? Why not give people hope instead of giving them a suicide pill? If you'd told me when I was growing up that Scotland, filled with douce, honourable Presbyterians and devout Roman Catholics, would be this close to legalizing state suicide, I would never have believed you. So thanks for bringing that up, Gayatri. I wasn't aware you were going to, but it allowed me to get that off my chest. Well, that's all for us. We're rather late in stopping, and it's, well, extremely late or extremely early here, whichever is your point of view. But we will be back live, God willing, on Wednesday with the Wednesday midweek edition of the Mother of All Talk Shows. God knows how many wars we'll be talking about then. God knows if the world will not itself be at war. Let's hope not. Let's pray for salvation. Good night.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.